Have you ever thought about using your genetics to inform and speed up your healing? Well, that's what we're talking about today on Wellness by Design. I'm your host, Jane Hogan, the Wellness Engineer, and my guest today is Dr. Sam Shay. Now, Sam is a chiropractor, he's a functional neurologist, he is an expert in genetic testing and what to do with those results. And he's also a comedian. We have a really interesting conversation about the different types of pain. He knows the brain so well, really ties into the parts of the brain, the functions of the brain. And he also talks about the specific genetic variants that you need to pay attention to when it comes to chronic pain, the ones that can shift the lever the quickest. So I hope you enjoy this episode. If you like, he calls himself, he likes to nerd out on this stuff. If you like nerding out on this kind of stuff, I think you're going to enjoy this episode. All right, I'll see you inside. Dr. Sam Shay, welcome to Wellness by Design today.
Thank you, James. Great to see you.
I'm so excited to have you here because I've known you for a couple of years and I
Mhm.
love this really dry, smart sense of humor that you've got. And you weave that into your work, but you've got all of this, neurology, functional medicine, expert in genetics. What brought you to this work that you're doing?
Sure. So I got into natural medicine the same way I got into comedy, through tragedy. And they're not so
I shouldn't
similar.
laugh.
Well, they definitely laugh. It's better than crying or vomiting. The the short version is that I starting at age 6, my parents had a nuclear divorce, to which me and my sisters were caught in the blast radius. And all of us coped in different ways. I coped with a sugar addiction, a video game addiction, a coffee habit, um, compounded also by a lot of physical and verbal violence at school for years and years and years, and no one stopped it, despite it being in full public display and my parents both knowing about it. You combine emotional stress and trauma at home with physical trauma at school. Like there was no safe space. So
Right.
I just retreated into screens, and sugar was a crippled insomniac. Like I could not get to sleep. It was when I finally collapsed, I would wake up in the middle of the night. And then when I collapsed back asleep, then I had to like wake up and just like totally stressed out. And to the point where it stunted my growth, where I never really had a growth spurt. I mean, you grow most in your sleep. I have size 11 feet, and based on my growth charts, the height of my father, I should be about 5'10", 6 feet tall, but I'm barely 5'6". And also really bad digestive problems, really bad chronic pain from the spinal injuries I sustained from the being hit from behind on
Oh my
school.
gosh. How,
And
how old were you when all this was happening?
I was in grade school, just through
Oh,
eighth grade, and then that was a different. Then there was a different type of abuse that was happening in high school, but more dangerous actually. And the and anxiety, depression, and all that. Basically, in high school, I had to make a decision. I have to either take control of my life or end it. And I chose to take control of it. And my parents were just wanting to medicate me into submission, both of them being psychiatrists and had no understanding or appreciation of mind-body connection whatsoever. They thought all of my problems were an SSRI deficiency or I was attention seeking. And what they interpreted as attention seeking was me crying for help and trying to connect. Uh,
understandably.
so I, fortunately enough, I met my first mentor who helped me uh, connect and understand that there's a connection between mind and body, and that my thoughts are not me, that my thoughts are things that fly through my head, and I don't have to identify with every thought that flits through my brain, and that I can use my own body and neurology. In fact, the technique she used back in the 90s was called brain gym, and she helped me rewire my belief systems about myself and what's possible. And then I decided instead of being the third generation medical doctor, I pivoted to become a natural doctor. And so I went to chiropractic school. And but while I was in chiropractic school, I heavily studied functional neurology and functional nutrition and what later was dubbed functional medicine, and went really, really, really heavy into neurology. And to me, neurology is the master subject because to know neurology, you have to know everything else underneath it. You have to know microbiology, pathology, physiology, anatomy, both general and neuroanatomy, um, biochemistry, lab testing. You have to rehab. You have to know all of it. So then I, when I graduated, I then taught for about a year or so, flying around the States, teaching other chiropractic students how to pass their national registration exam. So that was teaching basic sciences, X-ray analysis. And then I had a practice in New Zealand for 8 years, where I also got an acupuncture degree, studied with an osteopath, and started really doing functional medicine and lab testing, and especially genetics testing over there. And then came back in 2018 to the States and have been a virtual functional medicine practitioner ever since. And the way I got into all this was me just trying to heal my own deeply damaged physiology from the emotional, physical, and all the garbage food that I was fed as well. And naturally, as a story of any wounded healer, is that you learn the skills from healing yourself to then help others avoid the same fate or help them get out of a similar fate as quickly as possible. So and that's a common narrative. I mean, there's even an archetype called Chiron, the wounded healer,
Mm.
uh, devoted to that. In fact, I have a painting of Chiron on my wall, and with the narrative, not to linger on comedy, but it's a similar thing. I got into comedy because I didn't understand what was going on around me. It turns out I have what used to be called Asperger's syndrome, and that I wasn't born with social software. So what social interactions come to instinctually, I had to learn algorithmically.
Mhm.
And I had this terrible bug in my system growing up where I believed what people said. And this is why school was so horrible, is because I was so vulnerable to aggressive and malevolent characters, because I would just believe what they would say, and then they would lie to me and hurt. Like, it was, I don't even want to go into the details of it, but I then studied. I would watch television like an anthropologist studies a culture. I would turn on family sitcoms to try to understand human dynamics and human interactions. And I learned comedy and comedic timing from just thousands upon thousands upon thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of watching comedy on television,
Hmm.
and trying to understand how the world actually worked, because no one in the analog world was explaining anything. I was just being gaslit. But in on screens, I could actually watch in real time various archetypes interact, and then I created an entire system of recognizing human behaviors and human archetypes. And so it's a similar. And now what I do now, like the Wounded Healer, I made a 1 hour comedy show called Neurospicy: Love, Life, and Comedy on the Spectrum, which is available for free on YouTube. You can just put in Dr. Sam Shay Neurospicy and you'll find it. And I did that because it's a 60 minutes I wish someone shared with me 30 years ago. And it's designed to bring neurotypicals and non-neurotypicals, or normies and Aspies, however you want to use the slang, together. By the people listening, like, there's no politics, there's no swearing, there's no cheap body fluid jokes. It is PG-13 simply because of the headiness of the content, just because young children won't really understand it.
Right.
That's the only reason why I would say, if you were to give it an age range, it'd be PG-13. But it's just from the headiness of the content. That's it.
What a
So it's a way to, like, if I can help people physically through natural medicine and functional medicine, I can also help people like me socially through comedy. And that's why they're literally this very similar trajectory.
What a journey, Sam. And just thank you for making that decision to change things, to figure it out, and just actually dedicate your life, it sounds like, to this, helping people not have to go through what you went through. You just have so much knowledge. Who are the people that you help mostly now? Like what kind of people do you serve? How do they
There's a
come to
couple there's buckets is kind of a, it's not the best word, but it's the categories of people. One category of people I help are parents of children on the spectrum because their health matters too. And if a parent models healthy habits automatically and lives out those healthy habits, automatically the children do better because the parents are doing better.
you?
And that's something my parents didn't do, is they didn't model good health. I mean, my mother was in chronic pain all the time, as well as sleep deprived and highly stressed out, and also hangry. And she was not taking her physical health seriously, but it obviously affected her mood and affected her decisions on my behalf,
Mhm.
which on her own admission, by her own admission, were not good. And, I mean, she was in chronic pain, which is one reason why my first clinic in New Zealand was called Pain Doctors. And I took a very, very acute interest in pain in all sorts of different directions, genetically, neurologically, biochemically, physically, energetically from acupuncture. Like I really was looking at pain as from a multimodal, nutritionally from a multimodal perspective, simply because my mother's not dealing with her pain directly affected the family, especially me. And so therefore, as Chiron, again, wounded healer, what do? Try to fix it for someone else. And so that's one. So helping parents, I'm not really equipped to help children on the spectrum. You need more of like a local, someone with a local clinic to do that. But helping parents, there's a very special meaning to me because I would wish there was someone like me who helped my parents back when they needed it when I was young. I also help adults on the spectrum who are low, but helping them also with low resilience, fatigue, brain fog, insomnia, digestive problems, and there's basically two categories of people in this world of functional medicine. There's the people who want to get from chronic to normal, and the people from normal to optimal. Those are the two categories, and usually the parents are like, "Can I get from chronic to normal?" And
Yeah.
then when the kids are out of the house, then I can go from normal to optimal. And for adults on the spectrum, they can either be coming from chronic to normal, normal to optimal. The other people that are help, like with 80% of all functional medicine practices I'm aware of, females 35 to 65 with a myriad of whatever hormonal changes,
Hmm.
uh, all the shifts that happen in that 30-year window. This functional medicine has basically the vast majority of functional medicine is that. And I don't think there's any debate about that. So I've spent a huge amount of time helping that population. And then there's the people like entrepreneurs. It's the last category. They're usually the people who think they're trying to get from normal to optimal, but really they're just kind of overcompensating chronic and they need to get to normal first. Because they're usually stressed out, overwhelmed, and burnt out, but they're just kind of powering through. But there are people that I do have a couple people that I work with that are, super biohackery types. Like one guy who's an international lawyer, and I've been working with him for 7, 8 years now, and he's like this super ripped mid 50-year-old guy at this point, and he's just came to me explicitly to help stop the clock, the effects of aging. But that's just a kind of a that I'd say that's less than 5% of my practice is that because most people find out about me through these more chronic to normal conversations as opposed to normal to optimal.
Right. You mentioned chronic pain there, and really good point, Sam, that when someone in a family is
Mhm.
experiencing chronic pain, it affects everybody in the family.
Absolutely.
The mother,
Mhm.
especially. I
Yep.
mean,
Hmm.
mothers really do sort of control a lot of the household stuff in general, not
In
every.
general. Yeah,
Um,
we can if you want to spend 5 minutes of disclaimers for everything we're about to say, we can do it, but I think we can.
yeah, people understand. Um, so specifically, and you had your own chronic pain experience, and then you said in New Zealand you had this chronic pain clinic. When you're looking at the levers that shift chronic pain, what are the big levers?
The first lever is to take the pain seriously. And that's like when I asked off another, like if I'm talking to someone who's addicted to something, they have to want help, not just need help.
Yeah, it's
And
true.
and so the different and that some people say, well, why wouldn't people in pain not want help? Of course they want help. So, not really. Not
They want
always.
the pain to go away.
They want the pain to go away. Doesn't mean they're going to do the things necessary to actually make the pain go away
Yeah.
permanently. So
Mhm.
this is where the analgesics, thank you.
Okay.
This is the entire multi-billion dollar industry of the analgesics, of which my mother was a frequent customer.
Hmm.
And by the way, what's really interesting is certain analgesics, as you're likely aware, deaden empathy. They actually short circuit. I believe it's Tylenol that actually deadens the emotional pain switch, and so that's very risky. You say your mother takes Tylenol and not so empathic when her son's being abused. So there's there's a consequence, there's a knock-on consequence to not to just needing help but not wanting help. And I'm also not here to bag on analgesics. Like pain control is life-saving and necessary. It's the difference between, like, my view of medication is it's brilliant at buying time
Yeah.
to figure out why the problem is there in the first place to buy the time for. If you
Yeah.
just keep buying time, buying time, buying time,
Yeah. It's not the
then you're not
solution.
that it's not a solution. Just an ongoing iterative band-aid.
Yeah.
And so I'm not against pharmacy. I'm against the misuse, abuse, and overuse and misunderstanding of it. That's
Yeah.
all. So they have to want the help. That's number one. The biochemistry will do nothing when a change in philosophy is needed. That was a quote from it'll
I
come
like
to me.
it though. It's a good
Yeah,
quote.
it's not my quote. Glenn Braddy, out of Australia. That was the person who taught that quote to me. Um, so they have to want help. Then there's basically a decision tree. Is it physical? And this can be a combination of all these. Is it physical? Is it emotional? Is it neurological? Is it biochemical? Is it, did I mention emotional? I can't remember if I did or not.
Uh,
So,
yeah. Yeah.
physical, biochemical, neurological, emotional, and there's also genetic.
Okay. Hmm.
Okay. So we'll just pick apart all of them and people find utility in and understanding all of them, and then there'll be practical things in all of them. So let's talk about is it neurological pain? Okay. So neurological pain is when people have decreased frontal lobe activity. The frontal lobes is what makes us human. When we have decreased frontal lobe activity, we don't get what's called prefrontal inhibition. The prefrontal cortex is the most humanistic side of us. It's very
Like
strong.
creative decision making.
Executive function, language. It's also emotional control.
Hmm.
So when your frontal lobes start to shut down under stress, infection, inflammation, sleep deprivation, physical pain, um, exhaustion, nutritional depletion, toxicity, head injuries, um, just ambient dysglycemia that just ricochets up and down your bloodstream all the time. There's all sorts of reasons why your frontal lobes can be shutting down. Hypoxia. Your frontal lobes inhibit, that's what prefrontal inhibition is. The prefrontal lobes inhibit the limbic centers, the emotional centers. So you're less reactive. You're much more controlled. You're much more calm.
When it's
And
working.
when it's working. And so you can see this. So the frontal lobes also reflect on posture. People who have good frontal lobes have good posture.
Mhm.
And if you have poor what happens when people have chronically poor activated frontal lobes? They're in more pain, they're in more emotional pain,
Yeah.
they have worse posture, they have more physical pain, they have worse digestion because
Yeah.
then because you're in a fight or flight, therefore you shut down your parasympathetics. And it becomes this positive feedback loop. Now, we know who the smart ones are on television and in comic books, and I'm very serious about this, by who has the best posture. Do the supervillains have good posture or bad posture?
Well, they have nice posture.
They have perfect posture, better than a lot of the heroes, I should say. But what about their henchmen? And there's a key in the name, henchmen.
Hunch.
Hunched men, correct. Hunched men. They are hunched because they're more animal, they're more quadrupedal. They're bending forward like an animal. And when you look at the heroes that are half animal, Beast, Nightcrawler, Wolverine, Hulk, they have terrible posture. Terrible. Look at Hulk. I mean, he's an archetype. Hulked over, hunched over. Because their frontal lobe, Wolverine is constantly hunched over because he's just pissed off all the time. So we recognize this as the human animal because out of evolution we came out of animals, and animals don't have words but they can look at posture. So you can see how neurological pain is the lack of inhibition. Now there are many other types of neurological pain in the functional neurology program. There were two 15-hour weekends devoted to pain. One for the body minus the head, and then a complete separate 15-hour module just for head and face pain. Now, what I'm describing just prefrontal inhibition is one tiny slice of neurological based pain. And I'm just, for all the neuro geeks out there, that's my disclaimer. Then we're just going to pile on the disclaimer here.
Okay.
So, but I just want people to appreciate that there's an entire system of neurological pain that is actively being studied and acted on. So one of the practical things you can do is, one, not do the things to hurt your frontal lobes, like chemical poisoning, like alcohol. Don't do anything that's going to cause a head injury. Like boxing, rugby, football, soccer has a lot of head injuries because of head balls. Motorcycle crashing, obviously, horse falls. So when I was in New Zealand, there was most women got head injuries from car accidents, violence from other men, and horse falls. Men got head injuries from violence with other men, car injuries, and rugby.
Wow.
Uh, Sleep well, that helps your frontal lobes.
Yeah.
If you've got, have healthy diet, like all these other
Keeping
all
stress
the
low.
lifestyle stuff. Hmm?
Keeping stress low helps as well.
Stress low, yeah, stress low. All the things that you would like are good for a healthy brain will also help the neurological based pain. So then we've got physical pain. Now that's pretty straightforward. You
Yeah.
get an injury, you get inflammation at the local tissue level, and dealing with physical pain, dealing with injuries is important because if you don't properly attend to an injury, you can set up a chronic inflammatory loop. And
Mhm.
you can also set up a chronic, what's called nociceptive, nor noxious seption, or basically a chronic pain loop from a joint that's not moving properly. Now, I used to be a chiropractor. I mean, I still am, but I haven't adjusted in a clinic for since late 2017. The the most of the effects of a spinal adjustment by a chiropractor on functional MRI are not at the spine. They show up in the brain when you adjust the spine. When you have a joint that's stuck, whether it's a finger joint, an elbow joint, a shoulder joint, a rib, or a spinal joint, they're stuck, two things happen. You get an increase in local inflammatory chemicals, but you also get pain signals that are sent up to the brain that then activate the sympathetic nervous system, which then shut down your frontal lobes and you go more hunched.
Right.
So
Right.
when you adjust a joint and you correct it back to its normal full range of motion, you decrease nociception and you decrease inflammation. Now there may be local inflammation that's been built up there and needs time to cycle out. You may need the nutrition to help cycle it out. Again, more disclaimers. Um, but an adjustment will help you start to start to whittle away at this wall of neurological and chemical inflammation and pain signals that are just careening towards your nervous system and your
Mm.
frontal lobes. So getting your injuries worked on, chronic injuries, if you have any head injuries, get those worked on especially. And the only difference between the significance of having a misaligned joint in your pinky knuckle versus your spine is of how much greater a strength that neurological inflammatory signal will send to the brain. You know,
Mhm.
this is trivial compared to my C1, C2 joint being
Right.
misaligned.
Makes
Trivial.
sense.
So that's physical pain, and there's many things that can be done for physical pain: PT, osteopathy, acupuncture, Tui Na. There's whole systems of, you know, wraps and kinesiotaping, posture analysis, all this other stuff. Then we've got biochemical based pain, and this is where you get into the granularity of things like interleukin 6, and do you have it like and do you, the COX inhibitors and all these other kind of medical physiological jargons that just kind of swirl on some. The only people who love this is people in the medical profession and Scrabble enthusiasts. Like you can win a Scrabble tournament if you memorize the DSM-4. So
7-letter words in there.
exactly, and all of them have like lots of Z's and X's in it or whatever, especially the brand names of these medications. So there's the biochemical side of it, and we can talk about inflammation now. The inflammation cascade is very complex and nerdy, but what I would say is that the point of inflammation, from an evolutionary standpoint, is to repair damage and kill infections.
Mhm.
If I'm out there with a hunting party 50,000 years ago and I'm trying to take down a 3,000 pound animal with a tiny stick, one of us is going to get boar bit, trampled, head butted, whatever it's going to be. So let's say if I'm bit, what is a bite wound? It's tissue damage plus an injection of pathogens from the saliva and other stuff from the jaws of that animal.
Mhm.
What does inflammation do? It rushes in red and white blood cells and splints the area with inflammation so you don't move it to continue to injure it. And it rushes in red blood cells to repair, white blood cells to kill whatever was the infections were introduced.
Mhm.
That's inflammation. And histamine is a slightly different variant of it. Histamine's more the flood switch. You get stung by a bee and your arm swells up. The bee did not inject a half quart of water into your arm. That was your body triggering the flood switch to drown out the venom from that bee sting so the venom doesn't corrode or erode muscle, bone, tissue, nerve.
So
Now,
smart.
I don't think that bee sting will corrode bone, but certain snake bites would.
Yeah.
Possibly even a spider. Probably one spider out there that does it. But centipedes, scorpions, bees, insects, snakes, certain plants. You get these hives. It's because they're trying to dilute the toxic venom. Genetically, some people are more exaggerated response than others. And if you have too much of an exaggerated response, you can swell up from shrimp and possibly die from over. But if you have too little, the venom's going to kill you. So it's this constant balancing act
Mhm.
of how much histamine's enough. So it's a variant of inflammation. Inflammation is not bad. It's just like blood sugar is not bad. Too much is very bad. Not enough will kill you.
Mhm.
If you don't have cortisol, you'll die. If you don't have blood sugar, you'll die. If you don't have enough inflammation, you will die. If you have too
Right.
much, you'll die also, except differently.
Yeah. And
So
pain too is
pain.
affected.
By the way, one of the functions of pain, and when you have an injury to your elbow, for example, and again, I'm going to salvage your reputation of pain in a certain way. I'm serious. Like, so when you've got this is the fun. This is the fun and games you do on weekend seminars in neurology, right? um, when you injure your elbow, the pain is there to, number one, make you not move it so you injure the elbow further. That one everyone understands. What people don't understand is that because you're not able to move your elbow, every time you move your elbow, you send a signal up to your brain where you maintain the real estate of the brain for where the elbow where your elbow mechanics are. So you know how like people who are blind, like that area of the brain gets kind of reallocated to
Yeah.
hearing or smell. It's the same thing with joints. So pain is the body's way to keep the brain aware that there's still an elbow here,
Mhm.
maintaining the neurological real estate for the joint that was injured. So it's not that pain is bad. It's uncomfortable and it can be debilitating, but there's actually additional purposes to it to maintain the real estate in your brain. Because a lot of people, when they injure it and they numb it, 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 and then when the injury has healed, they're much more prone to re-injuring it because they can't actually figure out where their joint is in space and they'll hyperextend it or they'll bang into it. Like they'll lose
Interesting.
cognitive awareness, proprioception of that joint because the brain real estate was just scavenged and reallocated somewhere else.
Wow.
So, and you see this with ankles, especially. You see this most with ankles, with runners who sprain their ankles and just ice, 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 ice. I'm not saying icing is bad. It's just you got to be very clear about how you use it and not to overuse it. Because if you lose your real estate for your ankle and your brain, you're going to roll your ankle again and again, and because you don't have an awareness of where your ankle is in space, and you can step on it wrong and not realize it until it's too late and it rolls again.
That's interesting. I sprained my ankle running last spring.
Okay. You're
So
welcome, I guess.
so I want to make sure my brain knows where that joint is now. So I
Totally.
balancing things like that.
Balancing, well, first off, you want to get the joint adjusted and get it corrected and healed first. And that's where there's all these multimodal techniques are, whether it's gua sha or Graston from the chiropractic world. Gua sha was the Chinese medicine that Graston just rebranded, whether it's PT, whether it's osteopathy, whether it's chiropractic, whether it's acupuncture, whatever it might be. Getting the joint healed, and then making sure that the joint is aligned properly. That's where an extremity trained osteopath, chiropractor, or PT is really, really useful because you want the joint to be aligned correctly. Then you can, go and practitioners trained in this can give you exercises to help you reconnect better the
Hmm.
joint to the real estate again, so you can
Right. Makes sense.
basically squat and
Mhm.
get back to real estate. Um, so then the other types of pain are emotional pain. Now emotional pain is tied, and then we'll cover genetic pain next. Emotional pain can be tied to neurological pain. And they're a bit it's a bit hard to separate. But there's some very specific pathways in neurology that are not related to emotions
Mhm.
that again, 30 hours of pain in neurology I'm trying to condense into a 30-minute podcast here. Um, but in terms of emotional pain, what happens is one's sensitivity to all forms of pain goes up.
Right. That makes
And, and
sense.
and there's neurological. You can look at the receptor density pools on the surface of the certain neurons. You can look at the size of the hippocampus. You can look at you can look at the different relative activations of different limbic centers, different, like, you can look at all sorts of different imaging and biochemistry and histology and all the rest of it. But when you're in emotional pain, you are hypersensitive to all forms of pain,
Yeah.
all forms.
Really makes sense. I see that a lot.
Yeah, and this is where people, and I'm not, and, this is where people can get into what I call magic bulletism. So you've got all these different pain techniques, whether it's EFT or EMDR, that are like emotional techniques. Like, oh my God, my pain is gone. Everyone needs to do this. Okay, that's it's a great tool. Just don't make it a religion, please. Pretty please. And that's what I call magic bulletism. Because a thing worked for you, it doesn't mean it's going to work to the same degree or on the same timeline as someone else. But it's still a tool that should be respected and used, but not idolized.
Mhm.
And so, but the emotional pain side is absolutely real. And there are really great proven techniques out there, and they can seem a bit mystical. Like, I healed my patrilineal line from such and such generations through this, meditation, contemplation, soul retriever technique. And it can seem very mystical. And your lived experience of being radically less pain is real.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean the entire metaphysical narrative that led you to the technique to now being pain free is also as as real. It just means that you're out of pain and you have a psychological construct that helped you resolve emotional pain inside you. Whether or not that construct is true with the capital T, don't know.
Hmm.
Don't know. And you don't either. It's just but I'm a pragmatist. Did it work? And that's what matters to me. It
That's what
worked.
matters. Yeah.
So Um, the, so the techniques can get very mystical. I only care if they work. I'm not interested about the metaphysics of it. I just want to know if they work or not. And because pain will ruin your day and also ruin your family's day.
Hmm.
Um, so that's the emotional side of it. And then there's I want to pause there because that's like a really big bucket to just kind of summarize in a minute and a half.
It
Emotional
is.
pain. It's a really big bucket.
I want to ask you something, Sam. I've heard that emotional pain and physical pain are the same area in the brain. Is this true?
So, they may converge on the same spot in the brain, but physical pain travels on very specific neurons
Hmm.
outside the brain, whereas the emotional side itself is generated inside it's a
Okay.
cognitive structure. So it'd be a bit imprecise to say they're the same spot in the brain. How they get when the brain has like a couple common pathways. Like they just
Mhm.
all these signals kind of converge and summate in one area to give you here's my reality in this moment. Pain is one of those. But there's multiple pathways to land on. I mean, the hypothalamus is the boardroom of the body. You've
Mhm.
got physical, emotional, and biochemical signals all converge on the hypothalamus to determine are we under threat or not?
Right.
Yes or no? And if we're under threat, release the sympathetic system, release the kraken, whatever. And if we're not, then we can consider going to parasympathetics, which is rest, digest, long-term health, healing, growth, repair, as opposed to short-term survival, which is sympathetic.
Right.
So you can have this is where physical resolving physical pain can also help with emotional pain and vice versa. Because they don't have to be completely separate. They can also feed on each other. If you're in more emotional pain, you're going to be more physical pain. If you're in more physical pain, you're more vulnerable to more emotional pain. I mean,
Right.
unless you're a really trained meditator, like really trained, people people can be in physical pain and be the most quiescent, tranquil. I've met some of these people. They're just they have their body. In fact, in the Vedic scriptures, there's a one of the most revered enlightened saints in the Vedic scriptures is called Ashtavakra. Ashtavakra in Sanskrit literally means eight knots. The guy was deformed in eight separate ways.
So he was
That
in pain.
his literal name was Ashtavakra. So the pain that the consciousness can go beyond pain, but I'm not going to say this to emotionally gaslight people that, oh, you don't like your pain and you're suffering. That means you're not enlightened. Like that can be a form of
Right.
spiritual gaslighting that is borderline cruel,
Hmm.
just cruel, which I'm not endorsing. I have met those people too who feel they're so spiritually evolved. Like if you're so spiritually evolved, why do you feel like you're so much better than all? Anyway, it doesn't matter. That's a whole separate podcast. Um, so so there is a way to separate emotional pain and physical pain. That is also real, but
Okay.
that takes training, a lot of training,
A lot of
and
awareness.
yeah, and yeah, it's a non-trivial pursuit.
Hmm.
The last bit of pain I want to cover is genetics, and
Right.
now genetics is, I think, the real secret weapon here for pain management because it's so easy nowadays to actually get your genetic data, and then it's just a matter of interpretation and prioritization to know what to do first, next, and last to leverage what your genetics are to make sure that you have as an anti-inflammatory, you know, healthy life as possible. And I'm mentioning anti-inflammatory because we're talking about pain. I mean, there's many things to genetics, obviously, but in the context of pain, here's what I can say about if people are wanting to look at genetics. The big picture is to understand that some people are more prone to inflammation than others, meaning they're more prone to pain than others. Now, how does that possibly seem fair? How is that possibly fair? Good news, I can tell you. Um, what happens is that evolutionary biology, nature does not care one dime about you as an individual. They only care about your lineage, how far your genes go into the future. It's
Hmm.
the lineage that matters, not you as an individual. Sexual reproduction recombines genes that have varying degrees of responsiveness to environmental cues because over time, across generations, that lineage will adapt with enough variations over on average over time. Because if you have one, if everyone's a clone, all it's going to take is one optimized parasite to wipe everyone out in one generation. The entire development of sexual selection came about to combat parasitism. That's the entire point of sexual recombination is to stop a perfected, optimized parasite from wiping out a whole colony. So what happens is that what is the advantage of someone being more pro-inflammatory versus not? Well, let's go back to that hunting party. If I'm a hunter gatherer and I'm in a hunting party and me and my hunting party buddy, we both get bit in the exact same way with the exact same level of damage, and I mean identical, but I'm more pro-inflammatory than this guy. I will heal faster than this guy.
Hmm.
So there's an advantage in a physical run for survival in having a hyper-inflammatory response because I can repair faster and kill infections faster than my less inflammatory prone hunting party member. Trade-off, someone who's hyper-inflammatory will likely die sooner of chronic diseases compared to the less inflammatory prone person. So the trade-off is short-term survival if you have a high risk of injury
Hmm.
versus shorter lifespan with higher risk of chronic disease. That's the trade-off of being higher inflammation. So now it makes
Hmm.
complete and utter sense why some people are more inflammatory prone than others, because if we take it from an evolutionary biology state, completely logical. So,
Makes sense, but they don't necessarily like it.
well, I don't. I'm hyper-inflammatory prone. In fact, I got dethroned. I was the gold medalist in the crappy Gene Olympics up until about 3 summers ago. Until I tested someone,
What a
and
trophy.
I got dethroned. I'm super annoyed about that. No one remembers the silver medalist. So I mean, the bronze medalist. So like, good for you, bro. Silver medalist. Who are you? You know, gold is the hero. Anyway, um, so the so I have massively pro-inflammatory genes, which explained why when my 30s, why I was in so much pain growing up, just from no injuries, but I was just like chronically in pain. And then in my 30s, I had like joint pain like an 80-year-old man. And when I ran my genetics and I got my results back, I legit sat there and cried because one, it explained why I was in so much pain and why I was so sick. And it also gave me a way out because now I knew what are the most important genes that I could now address with nutrigenomics, with epigenetic lifestyle changes to change the way my inflammatory genes express to drop the inflammation. And I did it. And within 2 months, my pain was gone.
Yeah, I think that's the thing a lot of people miss with genes. They think that that they got this gene, there's nothing I can do about it. But we know that genes can change how they express, and
Oh, they
so
express. Yeah. Yeah.
that's the magic is get them to express in the way we want them to express.
Absolutely. The problem with most genetics tests is they give you all these genes of seemingly equal importance, along with it the 100 or so health tips with no prioritization, and people get overwhelmed and they careen into nihilistic fatalism, say, "Oh, might as well give up, pass the Twinkies," and as opposed to actually having the genes in the list of order of priority. And so, just we'll talk about some of the highest priority genes in inflammation.
Okay.
So we've got the number one and number two genes for pain in my clinical experience: VDR1, VDR2, vitamin D receptors, vitamin D receptor 2, the sequel, Judgment Day. Uh, vitamin D receptors, vitamin D controls up to 3 to 5% of your entire genome, which is enormous. And it's not just about bone density. That's a little bit of what it does. Most of what it does is control immunity and inflammation. So I'm not talking about this is the gene that doesn't convert sunlight into vitamin D. There's about 6 other genes that are about in that pathway. I'm not talking about that. That's getting vitamin D into the blood. You can do that through sunlight, supplements, and food. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about getting it from blood into the cells to actually act on the cells to deal with inflammation, immunity, and so on. That's the vitamin D receptors. The receptors are the cell is like a walled city, and nutrition can only get in through certain gates. And you can think of the bloodstream as a giant rotating sushi tray. And these receptors are like the chopsticks in this very clumsy metaphor, grabbing the vitamin D off this rotating sushi tray where vitamin D floats by. Well, if you don't have many chopsticks available that are coded for grabbing vitamin D, you can't bring the vitamin D into your system to make the anti-inflammatory immune supporting changes in your cells. So what I found is that I found with only one exception in my career, I had someone who had chronic health issues. It's only one exception. Everyone who's ever I've seen who have done genetics on that has a chronic health issue, they have homozygous or heterozygous variants in their VDR1 and VDR2 genes. The person who had green dots or wild types, normal genes, they had a chronic because they had massive, massive, massive emotional trauma. Um, which is not which is consistent for the trauma will cause anything if it's bad enough. Um, so VDR1, VDR2, very, very important to find out if you've got variants. Then you've got the most important inflammatory genes. The most famous ones out there, interleukin 6 and TNF alpha. Those are probably the two most researched um, inflammatory genes out there. Then, so you want to make sure that your genetics labs have those. Then the other important ones are the interleukin 10s. And a lot of these genetics companies don't have interleukin 10s, which is bonkers to me. They're the fire trucks. They're the ones that put out inflammation. So interleukin IL-10-1, IL-10-2, IL-10-3. Those are the three most important interleukin 10s. You have to know if your interleukin 10 is a squirt gun or a fire truck. If you have a little bit of inflammation, but you can't put it out, that little bit of inflammation will still just create chronic inflammation. Then you've got the CRP genes. And the CRP genes, those are the genes that code for the acute phase protein for inflammation in the liver. And if people have the hat trick of all three major CRP genes as variants on them, they have real risks of if they get inflamed, their liver gets really inflamed, and then they can't process inflammation as for the whole body. And this is where you get people that like people who get into CrossFit, for example, and they have these gene variants and they're hyperinflamers. They may get muscular temporarily, but then they put on this layer of like water weight that like covers their muscle tone and they have this like ruddy complexion because they have so much inflammation that their body retains water to dilute the inflammatory chemicals to buy the liver and kidneys time to get rid of them. So there's a way to know if there's an easy way to know in some respect. It's kind of a kitschy way to know it. If you find that if you're over exercise, how do you know if you're over exercising? Is if you stop exercising for a week and you look better, feel better, and you're stronger the week later. You've been over exercising.
Right.
Um, then there's the muffin test. The muffin test is that if you eat half a muffin and you put on 1 to 4 pounds in one day from that half muffin. Now, unless that muffin was last year's regifted Christmas fruitcake, it didn't weigh 1 to 4 pounds. So what happened was that it wasn't the calories. There's no way it was the calories that did that. Not even possible.
Right.
It was the inflammatory reaction to the chemicals, sugars, the colorings, the preservatives, whatever stuff leaches through the little wrap that they put around the base of the muffin, the all the chemicals and the organophosphates and the glyphosate and the wheat itself, whatever, the gluten. It's the inflammatory reaction that's creating you to swell with water weight.
Right.
It's not the calories. And that's if people pass them, if people react to the muffin test, that's a pretty good sign you're overinflamed.
Mhm.
And
So,
so if you know, go ahead.
Dr. Sam, how people say they know that they've got these variances, what are they going to do about it? Because we don't want them to feel like there's nothing they can do and throw up their hands. What can they do about this?
So a couple things. I mean, I've just named like what, 10 genes or so, something like that. But in reality, there's like easily 40 to 50 genes. And so if people want to do something right now, one, they have to want help, not need help. Two, start a real journey towards living an anti-inflammatory lifestyle, which will affect. So that means eating an anti-inflammatory diet, sleeping, minimizing stress in your life, exercising but not over exercising. It means uh, not exposing yourself to unnecessary stress, whether it's news or certain toxic people or whatever it might be.
Mhm.
Um, we could spend an entire 5 podcasts just listing off ingredients of food, but the big ones are, of course, high quality omega 3s, things that have a good magnesium, things that have minerals. We want healthy local food that's in season and fresh. And
Probably doesn't have an ingredient label.
if it has a label, it's probably not food, it's a food product.
Yeah.
So
Like product. I
food
have.
like product, yeah. So I mean, farmers and some people they don't have access to a farmer's market. That's just whether it's seasonal or just geographic. But just real foods, things that run on the earth or grow into the earth, then you're likely dealing with a food as opposed to a food product.
Mhm.
And um, I could list off supplements galore, but the reality is that with genetics, you can actually really get granular, know what supplements, what nutrients you're more likely to need more than others. And if people have the resources and the time bandwidth to actually work with a professional, don't just get your test and have it properly assessed so
Yeah,
that you can now learn what is the things to do in order of priority, as opposed to you just stick it through whatever algorithm is in there,
right.
and hopefully it's accurate, it's not hallucinating.
And also the right tests, as you said, the interleukin
Correct.
10. And
Interleukin 10.
also,
Yeah. So just again, the rundown of the genes that I think everyone who's interested in pain, these are the major ones I would test for. Okay. VDR1, VDR2, TNF alpha, interleukin 6, interleukin 10-1, -2, and -3. Interleukin 1s, there's 1A-1, 1A-2, there's what interleukin 1B, there's like a couple interleukin 1s. The three interleukin, the CRP genes, the COX gene, COX, one or two of those. I would also say COMT, because COMT is the gene that regulates your ability to break down adrenaline, dopamine, and cortisol in the brain. And if you have a variant on that, that enzyme is slow, so you have this lingering hyperactivation, which can maintain pain, and your perception of pain. Um, I would also make sure that your genes test for the GSTP1 gene, which is the glutathione. This is the rate limiting step for conjugating glutathione to many toxins. Um, and then HO-1, that's a gene that's typically thought of as being in the liver, but really it's an inflammatory gene for a whole host of complicated reasons I won't go into, but HO-1 is another one I would say. And then there's getting your genes tested for food triggers. Are you reactive to high histamines? Are you reactive to food allergens in general? Are you genetically vulnerable to alcohol? Are you genetically vulnerable to gluten? Are you genetically vulnerable to lactose? Um, there's certain food genes that relate to your food triggers that you should take seriously because those are hardwired and you're not going to do anything about. You might as well learn what your food triggers are so that you can avoid those foods and therefore not be so inflammatory on the inside.
it, I find this so interesting, Dr. Sam. Like, the geek in me loves data, right? So having this data just helps you hone in on an easier path, a faster path for you. So I'm so grateful we've had this opportunity to like pick your brain today.
Mhm.
Literally pick your brain about the brain and the impact of our genetics, the brain, our
Mhm.
thoughts, food, all this on the body and the pain.
Thank
So
you.
uh if you were to give someone,
I want to add one final thought to the
okay,
genetics. Testing the genes is one thing, but once you have the information, then there's all sorts of science behind what lifestyle, nutrition, and diet activities will change the expression of those genes. The
mhm,
trick is not to do all of them, it's to find the fewest number of things that activate all or most of them.
that makes sense.
That's how you prioritize. It's not simply just doing all 100 things. It's what's the five things that assess all 15 of those genes in one way or another.
The way we talked about it, it's like that are going to pull the levers
All the levers, yeah, exactly.
the most effective way. So what would you say is the one thing, if they don't have all their genetic information, what's one thing someone could do today that's going to shift them into a healing state?
I'm going to cheat and give one answer that leads into another. The first one is I mentioned at the top of the discussion, which is you have to want help, not just need help.
Yeah,
And if you're listening to this, you probably want help, not just need help. So I think you're probably already you're
we
pre-qualified
got those
for
people.
that. So that's number one, because people will be listening to this on behalf of someone else. So
That's true. I get
that's why
that
I
point.
bring this up is that again, I remember my mother who just was just pounding painkillers all the time. So they have to want help, not just need the help. The next best thing you can do, aside from getting your genes tested on all that, all that wonderful information, is I would prioritize your evening routine to optimize sleep.
Oh, that's good.
That's what I would prioritize because there is no such thing as a panacea, but sleep is a very close second.
Mm-hmm.
Very close. So if you can
Sleep.
have better quality sleep and optimize for that, that would, I mean, when I'm on like family podcasts or parenting podcasts, I say become a sleep-centered family.
Like that.
Everyone's life will be better. Literally everybody's. And I can say also this comes from my father's work, who was the staff psychiatrist for the Boston VA for over 20 years. And he did his patients were in tons of pain, war injuries and all the rest of it, and emotional pain. And he said unequivocally, sleep is the most important thing you can do to restore someone. Sleep is the most important thing that you can help someone with because everything else, that's a lead domino. Physical pain, emotional pain, all types of pain. Just sleep, sleep, sleep.
I love that. In my program, I have 12 habits, and one of the key ones is sleep and just prioritizing sleep. So
Totally.
important, Sam. Dr. Sam, where is the best place for people to find you and find out how to work with you?
Sure. It's just drsamshay.com, drsamshay.com. There, people can schedule a free chat to see if this methodology of, genetics and functional medicine, and I mean, you've got 12, I've got my 10 pillars of health, like like everyone's got, like, what I would tell people is like, if you're going to work with someone, make sure they have a framework, whatever it is.
Yeah.
They have a framework. What's the 12 points of this, the 10 pillars of that, the inverted hypotenuse of wellness? I don't care. Something. Make sure they've got some framework for lifestyle and for labs.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're working with someone who's taking this very seriously. So drsamshay.com. I'm on, I don't know how many podcasts at this point. I have a YouTube channel. There you can see my other podcasts. I also have my comedy stuff there. Again, Neurospicy is my hour show. And yeah, that's the best way to connect with me is through the website.
Wonderful. Well, we will have the links in the description so you can have a look there and check out the work that Dr. Sam is doing. And I want to say thank you. Thank you so much for the work that you are doing and for being a guest on Wellness by Design today.
Thank you. Really appreciate being here.
I appreciate the work that you're doing, and the people watching and listening, or maybe you're watching or listening for someone else that you care about. Share this podcast with them, and you might be changing their lives, changing your life, and really, if we can make a world with less pain, that's a better world. So
Absolutely.
thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you again soon.